Hi everyone. So today I wanted to do a little bit of a different video than my usual pregnancy journey videos that I have been documenting and sharing here on my channel. And I wanted to talk more about my journey to becoming a mother and the struggle that I experienced to get to this point. So I've watched a lot of videos on YouTube and I've seen a lot of women sharing their experiences with trying to get pregnant and the struggles they've been going through, whether it be due to multiple miscarriages, infertility, or their bodies just not being able to carry their babies to full term. And that was not my experience with my current pregnancy. When I started this channel, I started it wanting to document my journey to becoming pregnant, not knowing at the time of my first video that I was already pregnant. My husband and I, we got married in June of last year, and then we did try for a pregnancy in July, and we did not have a positive pregnancy test. So I did not document that. And then in August, we did try again, and I did not know we conceived at that time. And then I started my channel in September, not knowing that I was pregnant until a couple weeks after I had made that video. So I did have a successful pregnancy, and I am very grateful to God for that. But I am 40 years old, and I am becoming a mother at a late age in life. And my journey to motherhood did start quite a while ago, and it was a struggle for me. I have always wanted to be a mother since I was 11 years old. I just remember imagining that I would get married in my 20s and probably start having children in my mid to late 20s, and then I would have children by the time I was 30. But that didn't happen. That wasn't my story. So prior to my current marriage, I was married before. I met my ex-husband in 2019. We met unconventionally on an online chatting website and we became pretty quick friends. At that time, I was a virgin and I was saving sex for marriage. I was also saving my first kiss for my wedding day, and I wanted to do those things for my future husband as a gift to him and to honor God. So as a Christian, that was a very high standard that I had. And my ex-husband at the time, we became friends. We started talking quite a lot, developed a very fast friendship, and then decided to start dating. So I was 27 years old at that time. And after 3 years of dating, my ex and I decided to get married in July of 2012. We did have struggles in our relationship, just like any couple. And there were a lot of things that my ex struggled with, which I don't want to get into too much detail about, but I was willing to grow with him and to be patient with him. And he was a Christian. We were both Christians. We both went to church. I ended up moving out to where he lived and joined the church that he was going to. And we were non-denominational Christians. And so a lot of things that he believed, I believed, we had pretty much the same values. I will say there was one thing that we didn't really talk in depth about, and that was having children. Prior to us even dating and getting married, we did talk about like what we saw our futures like in 5 years, and I had told him that I one day hoped to be a wife and a mother within 5 years, and he told me that he thought I would make a wonderful mother. And so it was something that he knew about me prior to us dating and even getting married. And when we made the decision to get married, I just imagined that we would start our lives together, eventually have a family, and go from there. And I just know my ex, when I would see him, he was always really good with children. We worked, prior to getting married, we were the children's church leaders at our church. So we worked with the children there. And he was so good with the children. Like, they absolutely loved and adored him. So I saw this quality of a father in him. And I could see that someday he could make a really great dad. Like, we would go to our friends' weddings and all the kids would just gravitate towards him. So he had this ability to just draw children in, and they just loved him. They were like hanging off of his arms, playing. And then I just saw that and I thought, wow, he's going to be a great father someday. So we got married in July of 2012. And then in December of that year, I came to believe that I might be pregnant. And I told my ex-husband about it. I told him, I think I might be pregnant. I haven't taken a test yet. I do know that my period is late. And I had talked to my mom and a friend. My mom was like, you probably definitely should take a pregnancy test. And I actually wasn't sure that I was pregnant. I didn't have any pregnancy symptoms. I always thought, if a woman was pregnant, the biggest indication of that was nausea. Like, she would get nauseous. And I had no symptoms at all. So I thought, you know what? I'm probably not pregnant, which is what I told him. I said, I think I might be because my period's late, but I don't have any symptoms. So I will be taking a test. And when I told him that, he just kind of looked at me. He didn't get excited. He just looked at me and said, well, if you're pregnant, we're in this together. That was it. And it kind of was an odd, response in my opinion. And I did know that before we got married. He did tell me that he wasn't sure if he was going to be ready to have children right away. And I was fine with that because to me, it was like, I didn't want to get married and just jump right in and start having babies. I wanted to build our relationship, have a solid marriage, solid foundation, and then we can discuss and talk about when to bring children into our marriage. So I wasn't thinking like, oh, we're gonna start having kids right away. So I told him that, and then I wanted to wait. I wanted to wait until Christmas Eve to take the pregnancy test. So that didn't happen. On Christmas Eve, I ended up bleeding, and it was a little bit of a heavy flow. So I thought, okay, my period has come. I was used to having an irregular period, and I didn't really track my period as good as I should have back then. So I just thought, okay, my period's here. It was pretty heavy. Honestly, to this day, I don't know if maybe I had a miscarriage. I'm assuming that I just probably wasn't pregnant. My period was irregular and it just came late. So I told my ex-husband, I told him that I did not take a pregnancy test. My period came, and then his response was, oh, okay, well, that's good. Maybe it wasn't meant to be. And when he said that, I thought to myself, why would he say that? Maybe it's not meant to be. Those words kind of struck me, and I didn't like the way that sounded, but I ignored it. We went on with our lives, and that was it. We didn't really have any other instances where for, I guess I would say, the next like 4 years, 3 to 4 years, we weren't really trying. We weren't talking about having children. And 3 years into our marriage, I did bring it up to him. I did ask him, hey, we've been married for 3 years. Like, when do you want to start bringing children in, start having a baby? And at that time, a lot of people were asking us that constantly. We would go to church and people were like, oh, when are you guys going to have a baby? We had friends who were at church who were couples that were married and that were like in our age group who were starting to have children, some couples younger than us that were having children. And I remember I really wanted to be a mother so badly. And I was willing to be patient with my husband and give him time. I didn't want to push or rush him, but after 3 years, I did feel it was an appropriate time to have that conversation, especially because I wasn't getting any younger. He was 4 years younger than me, but by that time I was 33 years old, and I'm thinking, it's a good time to talk about it because we definitely weren't getting younger. And I didn't want to have any complications with having a baby, especially because I knew after 35, a lot of women do struggle. But I still wanted to trust God, and I didn't want to put too much pressure on my husband, but he didn't want to talk about it. It was not a conversation that he seemed to want to have. I could see him getting nervous whenever it would come up, but I didn't know why. And I couldn't understand why he still wasn't ready. And he would tell me, I'm still not ready. And I would ask him, what's wrong? Why do you feel that you're not ready? And he would just tell me, oh, because I don't like the way the world is going right now. And I just feel it's not a good time to bring a child into this world. And just different little reasons that I felt, well, God is going to take care of us. We put our faith and trust in the Lord, and we just let it happen. And I just figured, you know what, it'll probably just happen and his heart will change. because we weren't using any preventative measures from getting pregnant. I was never on birth control. The only thing he was doing was naturally pulling out to keep me from getting pregnant on some occasions. Not all the time, but there were times where he would do that. And it did kind of like hurt a little bit when those moments would happen, and I didn't understand. And it just was a hard conversation to have with him because he seemed so closed off about it. And I really do wish that we would have talked about it more prior to getting married, but I just assumed that he just wasn't ready, but someday he would be, because he never indicated anything otherwise. And there were moments where he even had asked me, if we did have a baby, well, what kind of names would we pick out? And he always told me, you would make a great mother someday. He always said that to me. So I just assumed like someday that it was going to happen. I did notice as time went on, there was a change that started to take place in him. And our relationship became very strained. I don't want to get into too much details, but my ex did start to go on a different spiritual journey as far as trying to better understand his faith and what he believed. And he started to pull away from the Christian faith, and he started to get more into New Age thinking and New Age philosophies. And he struggled with, I will say he did struggle with depression at that time, and it just became progressively worse. And eventually he was just fighting with trying to hang on to his Christian faith, but also accepting these New Age beliefs and getting into a lot of just weird ideas and just becoming very fearful. He did start to drink pretty heavily, and there was a night where he was very drunk. We got into an argument, and somehow children came up in that argument. And I remember him telling me that it was very hard for him because seeing me when I'm around children was hard because he could tell how much I really wanted to be a mother. And then he said, but I don't want to be a father. I've never wanted to be a father. I have never wanted to have children. This is not something I ever want. And then he started talking about how he wanted to get a vasectomy. And those words were like someone sticking a knife right through my heart. And I just remember being just frozen and just thinking like, what? Why is he saying these things? Because it's not something he's ever said before. Telling someone that you're not ready to have children is not the same as telling someone that you absolutely don't ever want to be a father and you don't ever want to have children and you want a vasectomy. It was probably in December, I had a feeling that I might be pregnant. I was having symptoms at that time, very strong symptoms that I actually documented in a video because I was waiting until my period was supposed to come, and then I had plans to take a test. I even told my mom about it. I told some of my sister-in-laws about it, a couple cousins. I mentioned it to them too. I went to visit my family, and I just had so much like cramping, and I was like bloated. I had extreme bloating, which is not something that I experienced during my period. My period, that was not a symptom that I regularly would have. I had very easy periods, not too much cramping, rarely. It's just not something that I experienced. So for me, I looked up pregnancy symptoms, and I did kind of correlate a lot of symptoms that I had with pregnancy. And I did notice that a lot of the symptoms were very similar to the symptoms you get right before your period comes. But I never had ever experienced that before. I always had very simple periods. If I even had slight cramping, I wouldn't even call it that. It was just a little bit of tightening in my pelvis that I knew my period was coming. Because at that time, my period started to become more regular, and I could time when it would happen. And I told my mom about it, and I was just really excited, and I was trying my hardest not to get too excited because I didn't want to feel the disappointment if I wasn't pregnant. But I just figured that I would trust in God, everything would work out, but I still strongly had this feeling that I was pregnant. And I did actually document that, so I will insert clips of me talking about my journey then. As time went on, you know, I didn't really think about it a lot. I only thought about it when someone would ask me if my husband and I were planning to have children. I don't know. Because at that time, my husband still, as time went on, he still kept saying he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready. And we weren't really talking about children a lot because we were still newly married. But after like 2 years had gone by, I started thinking about children. 2 years had gone by, and that's when I really started thinking about kids. And I really was just like, I want to be a mom. That's what I've always wanted to be. I've always wanted to be a mother since I was 11 years old. I loved kids so much, and that's what I wanted, was to be a wife and a mom. And even when I was a teenager, even when I made a decision to go to college, like, I just knew that I wanted to spend my life being a mom and being a wife and being a mother. That's what I wanted. I don't really tell people that because a lot of people look at motherhood and being a wife as not something that you should make your life goal. That if it happens, it happens, but you should have other goals. And I did. I mean, I did have other things I wanted to do. And I did go to college and I did all these other things, but I always still wanted to be a wife and a mom. That's just what I wanted. Like, I didn't really care about the other things that I thought I wanted to do. But I never really talked about it because a lot of people do, it's strange, but a lot of people do kind of have like a weird reaction, because I remember telling a few people before when I was younger, and they would just be like, like, really? Why would you, like, kind of like, why would you want to be that? And it's like, why wouldn't I want to be a wife and a mother? That's just, I love it. I think it would be great, you know? We have been married for 2 years. More and more people were asking me constantly, when are you having children? Do you guys want to have kids? It was a constant question. And then I was seeing a lot of other people having children. And I knew that I wanted to have children. I knew that I felt like I was ready. And I felt like, okay, I'm ready for this. Like, this is what I want. And, you know, I felt like, okay, I'm ready. But my husband still would tell me that he wasn't ready. He's like, oh. And we weren't talking about kids a lot. Like, the conversation came up, like, very rarely. But when it did come up, he would tell me that he just felt like he wasn't ready. And I didn't know what that meant, because I'm like, you can't really be ready for kids. You can't plan kids. It doesn't work like that. Like, I felt like it doesn't work like that. You can't just say, oh, okay, now I'm ready to have kids. Most people end up having kids and they're not even, like, expecting it to happen. It's, like, so unexpected. But I just kind of was really hurt by what he said. And so I never really wanted people to know that's how he felt. And he also, I could tell, didn't want people to know that either, because a lot of times when we were asked that question together, he would say something like, oh, maybe, well, maybe, like, do you guys want to have kids? He'd say, oh, maybe. Time went on, and eventually my husband, all of a sudden, he brought up children, and he asked me, like, what would I name our kids if we had some? And I'm like, thinking to myself, oh, is he ready for kids now? And this was about a year ago he had said that to me. And I was kind of like shocked, because I'm like, oh, okay. And I was like, I don't know. I just figured we'd plan it out together. And we had that one conversation, and no conversations after that. You know, he was still doing the pull-out method. And I'm like, well, at this rate, we're using condoms and doing the pull-out method. I don't see how I'm going to ever get pregnant. And so time had gone by, and then one more time a conversation came up about kids. And I initiated the conversation. And we didn't really talk a lot about having kids, but he knew that I wanted to have children. He knew that. And he even told me, he's like, I know. He's like, I can tell, because I see you around other kids, and I can see that you want kids. He's like, but I'm just not ready. He would just tell me that I'm just not ready. Last month, he did say, I don't ever want to have kids, ever. He's like, I don't ever see myself being a father. I don't see children being a part of my life. I don't want that. And when he said those words, it hurt so much. And I felt like, oh my gosh, my husband, why is he so selfish? Like, he's rejecting a part of who I am, and an important part of who I am. And I've wanted this since I was 11, and he's known that about me. And I was really upset. And so I took out my anger on God. And I got upset with God because I'm like, it's not fair, God, because you can't even change his heart. That's what I told God. I'm like, I don't think you can even change his heart because we have free will and he has free will. And so, well, like, how are you going to make this happen? You told me that someday I was going to be a mother. I just didn't really believe that God could change that. And, you know, that's when I got into my depression. But after I got out of that and just decided to just kind of let it go, it was difficult. It was very difficult because, and it hasn't been that long, it's been actually really recent, which is why I'm making this video, because I'm in a place where I just kind of had let it go. And I told God, you know, I'm going to just trust you. I'm just going to let you do what you do. And I'm just going to, like, not try to figure things out. And so, well, yesterday morning, my husband and I did the thing that couples do who are married and in love, and the thing that creates babies unexpectedly happened. His pull-out method was too slow, let's just put it that way. And I didn't realize it, but he realized it and was like, and told me, and I'm like, what? Okay. Because, I mean, really, I thought my husband was just really, really good at it, and we always usually used condoms, but yesterday we just didn't, and it was too slow. So, realizing that, I'm like, looked at my calendar and saw that it's during my fertile window, like I'm fertile right now, and seeing that, I was just like, oh my gosh, like, this could actually be happening. But I didn't want to think too much on it, because I'm like, well, what if it could be happening, but it couldn't be happening. Like, it's all up to God now, because, and I was just, I don't know, like, right now I'm feeling a lot of different emotions. Like, I'm super excited because I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't wait till my period is supposed to come in 2 weeks, like a week and a half, so that I can see if it's going to be late or not. But I still have to wait. You still, I think, have to wait, like, even longer than that. So I think I still have to wait, like, another week. So literally, I'm looking at almost 3 weeks of waiting to see if I'm pregnant, to take a test. And I'm excited, but then at the same time, I'm like, you know what? If I take a test and I find out that I'm not pregnant, and I go see a doctor and they confirm that I'm not, I'll be okay. I'll be okay, because I know that God loves and cares for me. My husband may never come to me and say, hey, let's have kids. I want to have kids. His heart may change because we have a child, and there's nothing he can do but have a changed heart. I don't know. But right now, I'm feeling a lot of different emotions, and we'll see. We'll see what happens, because I just wanted to record this video so I could look back. That I have to remember that God loves me regardless of my situation and regardless of how things look. That I just have to be patient, and I have to just trust in him. And, you know, he sees everything. He knows everything. And there's no reason for me to be depressed or to be sad or be angry or to feel rejected. And that God has a better timing of things than I do. That his timing is always perfect. And I feel like I'm still learning some things, and God is changing a lot of things in my heart. And so hopefully my next video, I'll do another video, and I'll kind of like just talk about my feelings then and just document that. But that's about it. That's all I really wanted to just put that into a video and to look back on that, because I feel like a lot of things are changing. A lot of things are happening that I don't even see. And that God's hand is working. So, that's it. Okay, so we just got back from Walmart, and I picked up some folic acid because I read online, they said that if you think you're pregnant and you still have to wait to take your test, that you should just start taking it right away. So I went ahead and got that, and I'll be taking the folic acid. And I still haven't told my husband that I think I'm pregnant, so he has no clue. He doesn't know. But I'll be taking a test next week, probably on the 30th or the 1st. I will most likely buy a couple of them so I can take them a few days apart and see if I can get a good, accurate reading, but we'll see. But TMI, I have been having the worst gas ever for like the past 4 days. My stomach has been just gurgly and I have been gassy all day. Like it's not just during parts of the day. I've been gassy all day for 4 days consecutively. And I never have bad gas like that. And I know it's not from any of the food that I've been eating because I haven't changed my diet. I've been eating, healthy and nothing that would create gas like that. And I know gas can be a symptom of period, your period coming, but I never have period symptoms earlier than a day or the day of. And I don't have bad gas or bloating like this. I mean, this is like, really bad. Like, even right now I'm gassy and I can just feel it. My stomach will be gurgling all of a sudden. It's so weird, but I don't know. I ended up just looking it up online because I'm like, I wonder if that's a sign of pregnancy. And I did read that it could be, but I don't know. I'm remaining hopeful. I'm really just trusting God and just believing for his will and for the best. I really do want to be pregnant. I really do want to have a baby, but I do want it to be in his timing. And I have presented my request to the Lord, and I have told him my heart, and he knows my heart and where I stand. So we will see. I will do another video on the 30th or the 1st, and I will kind of update how that pregnancy test went, and we'll see what happens. Okay, so update on my experience this past week. I went out of town to see my family for the Christmas weekend, and we stayed from Friday night and got home Tuesday in the morning, and today is Wednesday. So while I was visiting with my family for that whole time from Friday till Tuesday driving home, I had so much gassiness and bloating, and my stomach was just so tight and it was so uncomfortable. Even I think it was Christmas Eve, I looked in the mirror at my stomach and I could see my stomach was actually bloated. Like my stomach had was poking out. And I've never actually experienced that before, so it's kind of weird to see. So I was like, I don't know what's going on. Maybe I'm pregnant because I've never had this type of experience, like with heavy, just bloating and gassiness. Like I was so uncomfortable. It was hard to eat. So I really didn't even get to eat much while I was out of town. I just felt so uncomfortable. But got back yesterday, and as soon as I got back, I was super excited because my period is due in, from that date was due in 3 days. And I knew the pregnancy test that I had, you could test as early as 6 days. So I just wanted to see what would happen. I had 2 pregnancy tests, so I figured I would take one, and then I would wait at least 4 days after my expected period if it hadn't come yet, and then take the second test. So I went to grab the test and was opening up the package, and I felt something come out of me, and I'm like, oh, that felt like blood. Like that felt like something thick. So went to the bathroom, and I wiped, and it was just kind of like a watery pinkish color. So I thought, I'm like, okay, I guess my period's here. So I put on a panty liner because my periods are usually light the first day. Like they are pretty light for a few hours, and then I can switch to like a regular pad because I don't wear tampons. So I put on the panty liner, and I went ahead and I took the pregnancy test anyway, just to kind of see, like, just to take it. So I took it, got it, came back negative. And I did break down and I cried because I was so disappointed. Like I was really hopeful and thinking that this was it. This was finally happening. I was like just waiting for it to be January 1st. I'm like, if I can make it January 1st, or even the 2nd, like technically the 4th. I wanted to wait till January 4th to take the next test, and I was super excited because I'm like, oh, hopefully my period just goes past the 30th without coming. That would be so great. But later in the day yesterday, I mean, I was really emotional yesterday, just so emotional that I just laid in bed and slept most of the day. I cried most of the day. I prayed. It was a difficult time, especially because I did the thing that I shouldn't have did, and I got myself super excited about being pregnant. Like, I kept reading. Every time I thought I had a symptom, I Googled it. And then I would see women saying that they had the same symptoms and they took a pregnancy test and they got positive. So, and the only symptoms I really had was that gassiness and that bloating. I also had like a sharp tinge of pain last week that I have never had before. It was just really sharp, almost like a cramp. And I was really dizzy. A couple of times I was really dizzy, but it could have probably just been because I didn't eat a lot. But that was actually before I went out of town, and I was eating, so I don't know what it was. I had a couple of dizzy spells. Also, when I was at my family's house, I didn't really think about it until like now. I was having hot flashes, like literally having hot flashes. I Now that I think about it, I kept complaining so much about being hot, but it was like a rush of heat. Like it didn't last like all day. It was like a rush of heat that like rushed from like my chest up. And I just thought about that. And I just actually looked that up today and saw that hot flashes can be a sign of early pregnancy symptoms. So, but that was after I had, was bleeding. So I just figured, I don't know, maybe I was just hot, but I would say that was the only things that happened that I would have thought were pregnancy symptoms. I never got nauseous, and I just figured I didn't get nauseous because it's so early, like so early for me to be nauseous. And actually, I read that a lot of women have said they don't get nauseous at all. So I kind of got myself really excited and just thinking and counting how many months it would be when the baby would come, and just thinking of everything, how cool it would be because the baby would come in September. I would get to see both of our families for the holidays. We could bring the new baby. And I don't know. I was just really excited. I mentioned it to a couple of my family members that I thought I might be pregnant, but I wasn't sure. I had to wait to take a test, and they were excited. And they're like, oh, hopefully, we're hoping for you. We're praying for you. So thank you to them for, the hoping for me too. But I guess it's not God's timing. So, yeah, it was a very emotional time for me last night. And then today, last night before, like, really just deciding to completely crash for the night and go to bed, I put on a regular pad. And I woke up the next morning today, and there was nothing on the pad, but when I wiped, there was, like, I would say darker blood and a little more. So I would put on another pad. And I just changed just a little bit ago, and it's still not very heavy of a period, which isn't normal for me. Usually when my period does come, it's light to start out, but it's by the end of the day, like I've got a full pad, and it really isn't full. It hasn't been full yet. So, but anyway, that's pretty much it for my updates, I guess. I'm just going to be moving on, hopeful for the next time. I will probably vlog my next experience if I think that I may be pregnant. But I just wanted to do this just in case, because if I was pregnant, I wanted something to look back on, just on my experience, and just to kind of document everything, because I just really didn't know for sure. And I didn't want to wait until I took a test and knew, and then wish that I would have talked about my symptoms and talked about my experience. So, I mean, when I am pregnant one day, I'll be able to look back at this and just kind of see how long between the time and just kind of my experience and compare. So, I don't know, I think it's good to have these type of, documentation just in a video. I journal too, so I've journaled all of this. I've journaled everything in just my heart. So, that's it. So after taking the pregnancy test and finding out that I wasn't pregnant, I was crushed. I'm not going to lie, I was crushed because I was so hopeful, and I was praying and asking God that if it was the right time that he would bless us with a child. and that everything would be okay. I still tried to remain faithful, and I continued to pray and trust God, and I just believed that maybe God would change his heart. And we ended up having a conversation, and he did tell me one day, he just said, "You know what, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry that I'm robbing you of this." And I just thought to myself, why would you apologize and say that you're sorry for robbing me? Why not just take this to God? And I said that. I said, why not take it to God? And he said, I have tried that. He's like, I have asked God to change my heart, but I don't want to be a father. I don't want to have children. And he told me that the biggest reason why he didn't want to have children is because he likes his freedom. He did not want to be tied down to a child. He wanted to feel that he could do and go wherever he wanted. But at that time of him saying that, he was no longer of the faith. He had pretty much pushed away his Christian beliefs, so he had become pretty selfish at that time, and he was really only thinking about himself and his needs and what he wanted. And I just hope that he would come back to the truth and not continue believing a lie. But I told him, I said, well, if you told God that you wanted to have a change of heart, I said, it's not something that's just going to happen. You know, we have to remember everyone has free will. That's the thing. We all have free will. And I don't believe that God is going to just change someone's heart against their free will without that person giving their heart and their desires to him. And so I told him, I said, like, the only way that God could change your heart is if you were to give up the fact that you don't want to have children. If you were just like, you know, Lord, I don't want to have children, but because children are a gift from you and that's something that you desire, I'm wanting that. I want you to take away this desire to not have children and give me your desire for children. But I said, but you're still in the same breath saying that you don't want children. So I just felt like he really hadn't given that over to God. It was just like, oh, change my heart. But God, I'm not going to change your heart if you don't actually give it to him. And so at that point, I just was very saddened. I did go through a period of depression where I just really didn't know what to do. Like, I had been praying and asking God, like, please show my husband why having children is a beautiful experience. Take the fear of having children away from him. Just show him your will. But then in my heart, I wasn't really even sure if that was God's will for us to have children. I didn't want to bring a child into the world if they weren't going to be wanted by their father. And I didn't want to get pregnant and my husband resent me or resent our child because that's not something that he wants. And so I actually started to pray and tell God, you know, if you can, if I'm never going to be a mother, if my husband is never going to want to be a father, then just take the desire for having children away from me. You know, I had nieces and nephews. I could be happy with, you know, just loving on them. And it was a hard thing to do, to say to God, like, take this desire away, because people were still asking us when we were going to have children. And I wasn't able to just say, my husband doesn't want children. Like, I couldn't say those words, and I would just still say things like, well, in God's timing, in God's will, it'll happen. But I don't know. It was one of those things where it was like, I still wanted to remain hopeful, and I did strongly believe that someday I would be a mother. I was having dreams about being a mother and having children, though my ex-husband was never in those dreams, and I didn't really know why. I just remember that I did have children, but he was just never there. And I just thought that was kind of strange, but I thought, you know, maybe this is going to change. I did hear stories of other men who never wanted to have children, and then their wives got pregnant and they saw that little baby and their heart changed. It's like, how can you see your own child and not want to take care of them, not want to step into your role as their parent. I don't know. So it was difficult. It was a very struggling years for me, because years went by, continued to go by, where there was just no opportunity for us to have a child. There just wasn't. Our relationship became very strained. It was like we weren't even married. It was like we were roommates. And I was committed to staying married because as a Christian, I did not believe in divorce, and I felt that God could work on our marriage. And I did try to talk to him about it, and I asked him, like, do you want to stay married? I said, because now he wasn't talking to me anymore. He had built up a wall, had pushed me away. We were just living completely two different lives. We had two completely different spiritual beliefs. And I knew he did not want to be married. He had told all of his friends that he wanted to leave. And I just had to make an unfortunate decision, even though that's not what I wanted. But because he was no longer a Christian and marriage was not something that he was willing to continue, our marriage was not something he was willing to continue to honor. He did not want to work on things. I had to let him go. So I ended up filing for divorce. So when I filed for divorce, it was actually in the month of July during our quarantine that we were going through. And my divorce took a little bit of time before it was finalized. There was a lot of paperwork and a lot of things that I had to go through, but I still lived with my ex up until about October, when I got my own place and I had moved out. And I felt so much peace. And it was a lonely few months. And I just remember seeing, like, my brothers, my younger siblings, having babies and having children, and just feeling like it just was not going to happen for me. And my divorce was finalized that same year, or the following year. My divorce was finalized in May. And then late July of that year, I decided to give dating a chance. And I know I had told myself I was going to give a year, and I felt like it was a year because I had filed for divorce in July. I moved out in October, and then that next year my divorce was finalized in May, and then in July is when I decided to start dating. So it was a year, I would say, because even though I still lived with my ex that first couple of months, there was still a full year from the time that I told him that I was filing for divorce. And that's when I met my current husband. We met on a dating app, and everything just kind of fell into place. Like, we fell in love, we got married, and God really showed that he had been there the whole time for me. And he blessed me with a husband who just absolutely loves the idea of being a father. On actually our first date, one of his questions was, do you want children? And I was taken aback by that, because I'm like, is that a question that guys ask? It's definitely not a question that I've heard of men asking, and usually it's women who ask those questions, and we definitely try to avoid that question on the first date because you don't want to scare your date away. But he asked me that, and I just looked at him and I'm like, yeah, I've always wanted to be a mother. And if I ever get married again, I would love to have children, depending on God's plan. So yeah, I have to say, like, God has been there throughout my whole situation, all the pain and all the hurt and struggle of the 10 years that I went through, seeing friends and family members having babies and just wishing it was me. And it's like me feeling abandoned. I did have a time during my previous marriage where I did feel abandoned and forgotten by God. I did. I felt so alone. I felt like that I just was not going to have the dream and the desire that I had, that had been in my heart so strongly for so many years. But God knew the best time, and he knew that time was now. And I just want to say, for anyone watching, I'm talking to those who believe in God, who are Christians, that he sees your heart and he knows the desire of your heart. and that His timing is the best. I actually cannot imagine having a child and starting a family with anyone else than my current husband. My ex-husband, like, he didn't want that. He didn't want a family. He didn't want children. And I think that God really understood that about him. And even though we had gotten married and, I thought it was something that was going to happen, God knew. God knew both of our hearts, and we just weren't aligned. And now I have a husband who is just so excited about being a father. And it warms my heart. It's just the most beautiful thing to witness his joy and happiness, and just know that God knows what's best for us. And we may have to go through some trials and difficulties, pain and heartbreak to get there. But as long as we continue to trust and believe and bring ourselves back to what God has for us, and just remembering that and holding on tight to that truth, that it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So all of you women out there who are patiently waiting for God to bring you your baby, your rainbow baby, just know He is going to do that in time. And that's all I wanted to just share is my story, and just let you all know that I'm praying for you and just want you to be encouraged. Stand on the Word of God, stand on the truth, and just know that He loves you and He wants the best for you. Thank you for watching. Bye.